Pitching in general, no matter what you do in life, you're always pitching something to someone. It's a basic, essential human trait that I think that everyone needs to have.
Hi everyone, thanks for tuning into Notes of Design. To help support our mission spread knowledge, we have a very special guest on today's episode. Let's welcome Guru Vaidya, who is a technical evangelist presently working with Adobe as Solution Consulting Manager. Over the years, Guru had helped launch several versions and products of Adobe and Autodesk softwares across India while speaking at various press conferences and trade shows like FMX, Broadcast India and IBC. On this episode, Guru had shared great insights on product pitching. As being designers, it's our duty to not just design beautiful products but also to convey our decisions to the various stakeholders involved in a product. Along with these, he also helped us with sharing few techniques on effective pitching and presentation. In the end, we discussed on how content plays a very major role in presentation and what are the right steps that one must take prior to pitching. Hope you guys enjoy this episode, and on every Friday we release a new episode with a new creative leader around the world to help you understand different topics related to design. So don't forget to tune in into Notes of Design on every Friday. With that said, happy designing everyone. Hi Guru, welcome to Notes of Design. It's a pleasure hosting you today on our show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tej. It's a pleasure being here on the show.
So Guru, how's your day going?
So far, it's quite an easy Sunday. It's a little relaxed, and so I'm feeling a little relaxed today. Luckily, there's no work-related calls going to be coming in, so I'm glad about that. So far, so good. How's your Sunday?
My Sunday has been quite hectic. From morning, I did 2 recordings and then the third one. So super excited about all the new episodes coming.
Yeah, me too.
So Guru, if you could give a brief about yourself to our audience out there.
Sure, Tej. So my name is Guru Vaidya, and I'm currently a Solution Consulting Manager here at Adobe Systems in India. I'm based out of Mumbai. And this year, I just completed 10 years at Adobe. My team and I mainly focus on our Creative Cloud set of products, but we also help with Document Cloud as well, which is all about replacing paper with digital documents at Adobe. And then we also focus on some of our e-learning solutions, creating e-learning content for internal organizations, for their employees to learn, and so on and so forth. And so allows us an exposure to different industry verticals and different lines of businesses within those verticals. So, for example, with the Creative Cloud, we get to meet with designers and UX designers and motion graphic artists and video editors and so on and so forth. Whereas with Document Cloud, it's a completely different audience. It's IT teams and legal teams and HR teams and learning and development teams, sales, marketing, etc. And this is across different industry verticals like ITES, media and entertainment, BFSI, public sector, education, pharma, manufacturing, travel and hospitality too. Most of the times we are pitching solutions, or if you're not doing that, then we are probably helping our existing customers see the value in the products that they've already bought. And I think showing value is something that's very important in a subscription business like ours. As you can imagine, with this plethora of different types of industries, so each industry has a different set of problems and challenges. And so when we're pitching to these industries, we've got to ensure that we keep that in mind. There's no one size fits all kind of pitch. So we've got to tweak our pitches to make sure that it's relevant to the right audience. And sometimes you have to pitch internally as well, maybe to engineering or product marketing, for certain features that we want in the products to be added, which we think would help many of our customers on the field. There are those kind of presentations as well. And in my free time, I like to learn new things. I'm trying to get my head around the Unreal Engine now. See a lot of potential from a cinematography and product rendering point of view. So I'm quite fascinated by that. I also, in my free time, do a little bit of digital sculpting here and there. I find it very therapeutic. Helps me relax a lot. And another thing that I do to relax is also I sometimes take out my drone and or DSLR camera and go shoot some videos and just make some short films, drone films, and so on. And that's something that helps me exercise my creativity and also use the tools that we.
Thank you so much, Guru. So I wanted to know, like, what is your journey into design and how did you start? And what are your tips to the beginners?
So I started off during the dot-com boom. This was like late 90s, early 2000, when Flash was the predominantly used for a lot of web designing and gaming at that point as well. But very soon I realized that, I had more of an affinity towards 3D animation and 3D content. Maybe it was the games I was playing, I don't know. But it seemed a lot more fascinating to me. So I poured into 3D animation, learned the tools of the trade, created a decent enough showreel to get me a job at Dreamforest Films. And Dreamforest Films was interesting because it was a small studio, and one of the founders of the studio was had recently finished work on the Ice Age, the first Ice Age movie, and she had animated some of the shots with the kid. In the movie, and I thought that would be a great, place to learn new things and figure out things around 3D. And in hindsight, it was definitely a great. But I needed some more. We were doing a lot of TV ads at that point, and I wanted something more challenging. So I took up a role as a VFX artist at McKeown Studios in Mumbai. This is a brilliant studio that worked on a lot of VFX for Bollywood movies and television commercials. So I thought that would be a lot more challenging instead of creating a lot of toony looking characters. What if photoreal was to be created? Then what are the challenges that come with that? And so that was interesting, and I spent some years doing that. And while doing that, I also realized that, I was constantly helping out with certain community-based events. So there was this massive community of 3D artists in India called CG Tantra at one point. So I remember, very early on helping out during, doing masterclass sessions and sharing some production techniques and things like that. And also attending such events and looking at other speakers and looking at, trade shows, going to trade shows and looking at speakers there made me want to move into a role where, which was more public facing rather than sitting in a studio all day, all night, churning out work. I wanted something that is more field oriented, that allowed me to travel, allowed me to meet new people, find out problems and help solve them in some way. So that was something that I love doing. So I try to look for roles which fit that kind of a profile. And I found that, this product evangelism is a great option. It lets you, travel a lot. It gets you to meet new people on a regular basis, get to different industry vertical, explore different set of problems that people have. And so I've been on that journey now for almost the past 15 years now. I started with promotions, started promoting Maya, ZBrush, Pixar's RenderMan. NVIDIA had their own renderer called Gelato at one point, then it became Mental Ray. And then since the past 10 years now, it's been at Adobe. So some tips that I would share for beginners is what I found very useful is take up whatever comes to you. Like, don't be stubborn about taking a particular job or a particular role. Be more open towards any sort of a role that gets you a breakthrough into this vertical. And once you get a breakthrough, then it's easy to sort of navigate through the fabric of the industry and find something that you like doing. But it's very important to get that first breakthrough in, and that just requires you to be open to all sorts of new experiences, So as long as, you've got a goal that, okay, this is where you would like to be or would like to, what kind of work you'd like to do, just work backwards towards finding out, what kind of avenues would then allow you to reach that goal. And so I think, that helps a lot. Be very, participate in, community-based events. And I found that very useful, especially networking at these events. My past 4 jobs that I've had so far have mostly come in through references. So there's people have referred me. And so I think that is very powerful when you have a reference rather than, applying just straight away that way. So I think, so definitely, when you're going to these community events and trade shows, etc., it's a great place to meet up with peers from the industry and sort of network there. So that definitely helps a lot. Another thing that I've noticed is now that I've become a manager, I've been sort of receiving a lot of CVs and, looking out for roles. And I've found out that make it easier for the employer to know why you would be the right fit. Don't give the employer another job to look at your generic CV and then try and figure out if you're the right match or not. Make it easy for them to know why you would be the right candidate for that particular position. Like even in today's interview, for example, I chose to ignore my history or my teaching history, or that I had done an internship at a company that assembled computers after my 10th standard, right? I didn't think it was relevant for today's talk, right? So if it's not relevant in that context, then there's no reason to put it in there, right? You might be a great shot put thrower or a javelin thrower in school and might have won an award, but unless I'm hiring for a bodyguard's position, I don't see how that would be relevant, to put that on your CV. So try and be minimalistic and try and have more essential things and tweak your CVs, tweak your presentations towards what position you're applying for. I think that becomes very relevant. And then, of course, don't copy stuff from other CVs, right? That's the worst thing you could do. And, when I find things like that, like copying the design is one thing, and I understand, okay, the format, design, if it looks good, sure enough, why not? But copying the content, I mean, that's just pushing it too much, I think. So try and avoid that as much as possible is what I'd say. But yeah, those are my tips.
Thank you so much, Guru, for such insightful advices. Like those are really the meaningful ones which actually the young generation should look forward to. So now, as you've been like product evangelizing, so product pitching is a very essential part of product evangelism. So what exactly is product pitching and how important is it for a designer to pitch their design solution for their decisions behind the product?
In my view, I think that product pitching is effectively communicating the value of your product to an audience in a way in which they would easily understand and care about it. It's very important that they care about it. Pitching in general, no matter what you do in life, right? You're always pitching something to someone, regardless. So it's not just designers, it's just something that's a basic, essential human trait that I think that everyone needs to have, because we live in a society that's built on the rules of reciprocation. And the rule of reciprocation states that we should repay in kind what another person has provided us. And there's no human society today on the planet which does not subscribe to this rule. In fact, some historians even believe that that is primarily what makes us human and why we could collaborate but that's a whole nother story altogether. But coming back to presentations, why is it important in presentations is also, if you notice that, very commonly everyone uses the phrase to pay attention, right? So why is it to pay attention? Why not give attention? They're totally different things. Paying attention and giving attention mean completely different things. Paying attention actually comes from Latin. And the original Latin word actually translates to appease or pacify a creditor. So when we pay attention to someone, we are obliged to give someone, what that means is we are obliged to give someone our attention. And there are a number of reasons why you might want to pay attention to something. But in this context, the reason primarily is necessity. There's something you need that, you're getting out of it, right? And it's very hard to communicate this value of a particular product or a pitch over an email with a bunch of pictures and a PowerPoint presentation. And which is why it's important to pitch, to make a presentation rather than any other medium of sharing your ideas.
Thank you so much, Guru, for that. But what are the effective techniques that you suggest for effective pitching or the presentation?
Now, there are many techniques and, in order to make effective presentations. But if I had to narrow it down to a few, I would say, first of all, know your audience really well and tailor your content towards them. And I've already mentioned this earlier, but I think repetition helps. So I'm going to say that again. So definitely, pay attention to who you're presenting to. Know your content really well and research as much as possible on the subject. Many times I notice what people do is they use PowerPoint as a crutch, and they end up depending on the PowerPoint presentation a lot when it comes to, giving the pitch, and don't do that. I think it's important that you should, be very, very well versed with the content, very, very well versed with the pitch. And you should be good enough to, even if, let's say, whoever you're meeting, or you're pitching the idea to, does not have enough time or does not have a projector in the room, or maybe you're sitting in a cafeteria or something. So you should have that ability to think on your feet quickly and make that pitch in a concise manner, just so that, and in a succinct way, just so that, your points, important points go across, you are successful there. But in order to do that, you need to be really, really familiar with your content, to be able to then quickly whiteboard it or just take a tissue paper and make so I think that's also very essential. And I found that very, quite helpful at times, because sometimes you'd expect to do a presentation worth an hour's length, and then you figure out, oh no, the, particular CXO only has 15 minutes of free time. And then now you've got to take all your 60 slides and then somehow, combine them. But it's always better to be able to, if you're familiar with the content, it's always better to be able to adapt to the situation and then present in a way that's fitting for that particular situation. Start with a story. It always helps make a very limbic opening, and it's a great hook to get your audience's engagement. I remember once during one of our internal trainings, there was this trainer who was training us on how to do presentations. And they often, when we would foray into uncharted territories or things that were irrelevant for that particular presentation, so he would have this placard saying, so what? And then every time we went a little overboard, he would just say, so what? So what if, why is it relevant to me? And that was a good way to, which reminds me, instead of PowerPoint, if you also have, like, I understand sometimes, you do need a bit of help, then visual aids are really good, having some sort of short notes and things like that while doing a presentation. There's no shame in having that, and just to remind you of the point, but again, not to be like a crutch where you're completely reading off the piece of paper. Good body language is often overlooked, but it's important to have that. I think I read somewhere that more than 90% of communication is non-verbal, and one tip that I can share here is that I remember someone telling me that it's important. Many people ask me, what's the right attire to wear? What's the right thing to wear to a presentation? And your best bet is to reflect your audience and try and wear what they are wearing. And that's the most easiest way in which they would relate to you as a human being. So I think that makes a huge difference. So when I'm usually presenting to designers, it's mostly jeans and a t-shirt or something like that. Or while if it's for, some legal team of a pharma company, then I'd, probably wear a suit or a blazer or something like that, So depending on the audience that you're presenting to, you would have to switch your attire accordingly. Use the tell, show, tell method for doing demos. Found that to be quite effective way of breaking down your demonstration into various tell, show, tell loops and then presenting them. That makes a great, I think, way to present your ideas. There's a tip from my old manager, Rajesh Patil, who used to always tell us to stand while doing presentations. Especially if you're a low energy person, it helps a lot if you stand and do presentation. Of course, in today's times when everyone's doing online and presentations like this, it can be a little challenging. But if you are someone with a little low energy and you're a little meek sounding, then maybe if you stood up and did your presentations, it just helps bring a lot more energy to your presentation, and that in effect is more effective. So definitely look at that as an option. Practice. Get your presentation, like, especially if it's very important, make sure that you can deliver it even without the deck, right? So that only comes from practicing a lot. And you'd also have to, I've noticed the experiences, you'd have to change your presentation style depending on the type of audience you're presenting. So if it's a small room with just a couple of people, maybe, you might not need to be as expressive or as animated in that kind of a setting. Maybe you could be a little more somber. But then on the other hand, if you're, like, for example, I had a presentation at one of the universities here in India, but there were 2,000 students in the audience. And you're presenting to 2,000 students, you can't be, meek, and you can't be, low energy. So you've got to be dramatic. It's almost like a performance you're doing on stage, and it's almost got to feel that way if you're trying to get, the attention of so many people in the audience. And even your content should be reflective of that. So, for example, if you have a mixed audience of mixed set of people, then, your content should be built adequately in order to, make sure that it's relevant to all of them. Whereas, if you're just doing a certain type of audience, then you can tweak the content to make sure it's relevant for them. And of course, your voice tone and all of those things also are quite important. And, if you've seen the movie, The King's Speech, then you'll know it's possible to fix that just so you're not sounding too monotonous, and you can mix that up with different intonations and things like that. So that's also another good technique that I've come across.
Thank you so much, Guru, for all these wonderful techniques. And adding on to this, I would say like authenticity and data also really helps us put forward a decision or the product that we are pitching as well, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, I totally agree with you.
Thank you, Guru. Coming to the next part, which is like the content thing, because content is a very major part while you are pitching about a product. So what are the right ways on delivering the effective content to the audience?
So I already mentioned this earlier about how there's no one size fits all, right? So depending on the situation, the context, who you're presenting to, who's the audience, you'll have to tweak the content accordingly. I also mentioned about how a limbic start and having a sort of a theme throughout your presentation really helps in order to make it more engaging to the audience. So try and weave like some sort of a narrative or a theme around your pitch. It just makes it a lot more interesting rather than just presenting it blandly. PowerPoint is a great tool for making presentations if it's used correctly. That is, you can create some really nice looking customer journeys in there, and now especially with the videos and animation too also help a lot when you're making any sort of presentation. So make sure to include some of that, and of course having good imagery also really helps. It's much better than having multiple lines of text on the deck, so it just makes it look a lot more easier to read. And also you don't want the audience to spend too much time reading your deck rather than listening to you, right? You can only do one thing at a time. So generally you want to keep your decks, light on the text and more, heavy on imagery and videos and, animation. That really helps. Do what Marie Kondo says, Marie Kondo says that like for every object in your house, you've got to ask a question about, does this spark joy, right? Don't ask if it sparks joy or not for your presentation, but just say, is this essential, right? Would be the question that you should be asking when you're making your deck. And there's no point just jabbering about content that's not relevant. So try and be take a minimalistic approach when it comes to making decks to ensure that it's to the point, completely succinct in a way that's relevant to that audience. Yeah, those are some of the tips that I can think of.
Thank you so much, Guru. So on a concluding part, we would like to recommend you any 3 books to our listeners out there.
I would recommend Guns, Germs and Steel by Jared Diamond. It's a great book about the origins of man, and if you're going through a midlife crisis as well, it's a pretty good read. The Origin of Species, I said, by Charles Darwin is also a great book. Especially, I love a lot to read a lot about biology, and so that would be another favorite one. And another one that I would list here is Essentialism by Gary McKeown. That's a great read as well.
So, Guru, any 3 people who inspire you in this ecosystem?
Oh, there are loads of people that inspire me. I think, first of all, I'd say there are 3 categories of people, I'd say. So first category would be, of course, the Adobe employees, the colleagues that I work with. But they're mostly only going to be known to Adobe people. But if there are some of your audience members wants to follow some really good speakers at Adobe, there's Terry White, who's a worldwide evangelist, Jason Levine. I'd also say Paul Burnett, Michael Stoddart are some of the guys that you find videos on YouTube. There's also Carl Soule. So all of these evangelists that work within Adobe are amazing presenters, and they're amazing to learn more from and understand, how they go about working. Then outside of Adobe, there's an artist that I follow called Krishnamurti Costa, also known as Anthropos. He's one of the senior digital artists at ILM. I love his sculpting work, and he's worked on some pretty big Hollywood movies, and I always look forward to his work, and they're quite inspiring. And the third category would be the customers that I meet on a daily basis. All of our customers here in India, when I go in and present, we also end up they share some of their work that they've been doing. And it's always inspiring and almost makes you want to get back into production. So I think these are the 3 main categories of people who inspire me.
Thank you so much, Guru. It was great hosting you today on our show. Thanks for your great time.
Thanks for having me, Tej.